All right, that's the best I got. Let's go.
Wait. Good morning.
Oh.
Welcome to the Sun Dragon Sideshow.
You keep stealing my line.
Sorry.
Now I have to say, and I want to say the most dangerous show of the week because I don't know what to say. But it's not the most dangerous. It's the Dear Becky and Lizzy edition. So, if you say the sideshow...
We need show notes.
I know. If you say the sideshow, then I have to learn what to say next, which, I should be capable of because, it's not that bad, right?
We need show notes.
It's not like it's a soap opera where the dialogue changes 10 times in one day and you have to memorize it. Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm the owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in chilly and sunny, and we'll see what happens today, Brevard, North Carolina.
I'm Liz. I'm the minion there.
At least we get that part right. So.
It's supposed to warm up to like 60.
Couldn't tell it now, but okay. I will wait for that to happen. So you picked a few things. I like it. Okay. No, I was noticing there's like a strawberry cream one up there, but I don't know what we pair it with. So
yeah.
We got some props because we have multiple questions on one of the topics that we could address today. So we're going to start with the other topic, though, executive decision, so the other topic doesn't get neglected. We got an actual card. Shout out to, well, are we still keeping Dear Becky and Lizzy anonymous? I don't even know. We have been. Shout out
Math
to,
challenge knitter.
You know who you are. Shout out to you. Awesome.
I'll let you read it today.
Are you saying you can't read cursive? What?
No, I can read cursive. I have emails to read, so I figured we're going to...
That's always been your job, is to read the questions. No, it's fine. I might flub this a little. This is what Liz is putting me on the spot, because I always make fun of her on the spot. So, okay. Dear B&L, I have knitted only a few sweaters, mostly because of fit issues. Of the sweaters I've made, only one or two I actually wear. Only one I actually wear. See, it's already, I cannot seem to fit my armholes. Conventional wisdom says to measure the largest part of your bust, but that almost never accommodates my large upper arms. I've seen notes on Ravelry that say making size 4 for body and size 5 for the arms. I'm not sure how one does this. I did attempt it in my last sweater by adding more raglan increases, but I ended up with extra fabric in the back. Is there a way to only add stitches to make the sleeve larger and not the body? Is there a way to know when you have enough increases? I'm not sure if you have a tips and tricks on measuring for fitted knitwear, but I'd like that. I enjoy your show so much and look forward to it every day you're on. I'm growing more confident in my knitting, all because of you. Thanks so much, Math Challenge Knitter. Thank you for the letter. We love it. It's awesome. I want to address this, I'm trying to figure out the best way to address this. I'm going to kind of go backwards. I don't have a tips and tricks on measuring for fitted knitwear because I'm not an expert at that. We are about to go into theoretical knitting instead of theoretical physics land to talk about what we think could work in this situation. But we're not experts at it. Because often I have things that have extra fabric in places. I try as much as I can to go with the pattern for the shop so I can show people what happens when you follow the pattern. I have worked with some knitters on modifying things, but basically they've looked up stuff and we've done it together, and I feel like that's not enough for me to say, well, here's what you do. We have a theory on the armhole thing. Mm-hmm. Before we get to it, again, going backwards, I'd love to be able to magically produce a tips and tricks video on this and make it all work well. People ask for, how do I formulate? How do I calculate? And I have the calculation for if your stitch gauge is different. One way to make that work, to modify a pattern. It's not guaranteed, though. And
I've dabbled in the magic math because I change needle and yarn sizes. So I've played with the magic math and...
Kind of works.
It kind of does and kind of does. For me, for my sweaters, it doesn't matter how much positive ease I get because I love positive ease. But if I'm making a sweater for someone else, my husband,
I don't know why that one went wrong, but,
it turned out bigger than, I would have liked it to fit on him. And Rebecca's like, well, did you do a gauge swatch? And I'm like, I swatched, and then I did the magic math, and it came out big. And
Well, and
I'm just not practiced in doing sweaters for other people. Like, I know what I like. So,
and you know what kind of fits you. But one of the other things on that one is not that it always makes a difference, and I don't usually pay attention to this, even though I should. Did you swatch flat and then knit in the round? Because sometimes that changes things. So,
yes,
just something to think
because,
about. So, it doesn't tend to change things for me, but I'm not everybody, so I can't say, well, it worked for me, so it's going to work for everybody. Because especially if you're Norwegian purling, when you were doing your swatch, your Norwegian pearls might have a different gauge than your knits. But I would think it would go the other way. It would end up being too small. So I don't. Anyway.
It's why I'm not making my brother a sweater.
There are multiple reasons why you're not making your brother a sweater.
Yes, there are
but
multiple.
But that's one of them. Yes. Okay, so going backwards, is there a way to know when you have enough increases, just in general? If you're doing a top-down, we talked about this, right? If you're doing a top-down, my best way to know if you have enough increases is to try it on. It means slipping stitches onto a stitch holder, because usually needles aren't long enough, or a second needle, or something where you can see the full expanse of it with like this one with the raglan increases, and putting it over your head. Like if you're doing a bottom up, it's a little wonkier, and I'm not an expert in that. I've only done like 1 or 2 bottom up sweaters. Actually, I think I've only completed 1. So,
and we should say we're both really fans of
the top down.
Top down, so you can try it on, and either raglan or the all over yoke increases. The other shoulders and whatnot, we don't necessarily.
Well, I mean, I've had some experience with, but yeah. I just discovered, because I finally looked at the pattern, that the pressed flowers cardigan, that I'm like, look at all these options, it's so great, and we're going to do classes, and the pressed flowers cardigan is a bottom up. That'll be fun. It's different bottom up, though, and we'll talk about this more later. It's different bottom up than my reluctant homeschooler, in that it's it's almost a drop sleeve sweater, so you're going up at the armholes, you do the front and the back, but and then you pick up stitches around the armhole to get the sleeve off of it. So hang on to that. That's different than what this person's talking about. But really, if you're doing a top down of whatever sort, and then we'll try to get to the arm capacity thing, to know if it's going to fit, I really do recommend getting it all on stitch holders and trying it on, because then you can see how it floats. It's kind of hard if you don't have a second person there to kind of pull and poke and stuff, but you can see how the yoke part, which is between the collar and the underarm, how it's going, and if it's going to sit on your shoulders. And as we work backwards to the sleeve part, you can kind of hold it up and see if, according to the raglan seam, if there's enough here to wrap around your arm. And always remember, most sweaters, also, there's the cast on under here. That can be another way to, which, again, I'll try to circle back to when we're done with our other thing, about having enough room for the arm. So, but that's enough to see how it sits as like almost a poncho at that point on you, to see if you've got enough material.
I generally try to pinch the 2 raglan when I get down that far. And I generally have to have Bernie or, a second person be like, okay, push that raglan back there.
Yeah, make sure it's falling in the right spot, right?
So that I can try and pinch it under my arm.
Yeah, and pinching it all the way together under your arm is a great way to know you definitely have enough material. But know that most sweaters, you don't have to have the sweater part here have enough to pinch together here. Like there's usually, you make allowances by casting on extra stitches to cross that gap. And sometimes if you've got bigger upper arms, that's another thing you may want to do, is add extra stitches there. It does add extra stitches to your torso. And I'm about to address what in my head, kind of makes sense to not have as much material here and there. But adding extra stitches under your arms will add extra material on your sides. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's not. I'm pretty thick this way, so I'm okay with that. But not everyone might be. And what I think the letter writer is addressing with the extra material is extra material here or here. And here might not be so bad, right? Because some of us have big girls. Some of us don't. the back, if you have equal increases on the front and the back, then sometimes you end up with extra material in the back. I've had that happen with all over increased sweaters where it's really fluffy in the back. And sometimes I just try to say, well, I don't see that. I can't see that because it's only in the mirror, and I just won't look at my back in the mirror when I'm wearing that sweater. So my best theory on we need more material for the sleeves, for the armholes, because of thicker upper arms, which a lot of us have, and not adding extra material here or here is, and some patterns do this already to some extent, is only increasing on, when you do the raglan seams, having several rows where you're only increasing on the sleeve parts and not on the front and back.
Turn sideways because you have a perfect sweater-ish for this.
I have one I'm working on too that we can do, but
her raglan sleeves come here, and you'll have stitch markers on either side of that. You're just adding stitches inside both sets of stitch markers,
and not on the front and
not
back.
on the other side. Yeah.
And so it means, and it's really easy to get into the habit of, okay, there's a stitch marker, I'm increasing on both sides of it. If you want to increase only on the sleeves and not on the front and back, then you're not increasing on both sides of the stitch marker. You're only increasing, like Liz is saying, on the inside parts of what is your sleeve. So, and like I said, there's some, I've come across some patterns where they start with all over increases and then they switch to only on the sleeves or only on the front and back. I think it's usually only on the sleeves though. If they're trying to like slenderize or like modify so it's not just a 45-degree angle, basically. And so on this one, it does mean you have to be conscious of what is your front and back and what are your sleeves when you're increasing, instead of just, it's an increase row, I can increase on either side, yay! And like, this is my flax that I'm doing. And the sleeves are usually the ones that have fewer like stitches between. Like this has like I think I'm at like 40 or so between, like on the sleeve side. So it's the up here and mirror imaged over here. And the front and back, this has a lot more stitches. It's not quite twice, but it's definitely like 1/3 more at least, that kind of thing. And different pattern writers are going to have different formulas for how they have factored this. But if I wanted to have more material for my sleeves in the end, then on my increase row, my beginning of round marker, try to hold this towards you guys and still think straight. My beginning of round marker is my yellow one, which is here. And as I'm actually knitting this direction, when I hold it away from myself, I get confused. But I'm going to be knitting my sleeve first. So I would start with an increase, knit over, and do an increase. And then on this longer section, I would just knit straight across. So no increase, other side of this marker, increase, and come over. See, I'm already starting to lose a stitch or two here. And at this next stitch marker, increase on the side coming up to it and not on the side after it, because then I'm on my back. And then do a row of set knitting.
If you like how the sweater fits your torso, mm-hmm. you want to keep all the raglan increases on both sides. If you want to increase, I'd do it on your set rows and increase.
An extra increase.
That's
the other thing. I mean,
arms.
there are a lot of factors, and there's a lot of trial and error in this. Mm-hmm. If you don't want it to get longer, then you want to stop when the pattern tells you to stop doing the increases. Yes. Then what Liz is saying is on the set rows, add increases just on the sleeves. You might find that puckers too far too fast, and you'll have to modify that. You don't want to get rid of increases on the front and back if you like the fit there, or if you think you're going to like the fit there. Excuse me. So, and there are some patterns that tell you at some point to increase every row instead of every other row. So it really is going to take some trial and error to get it right.
Yeah.
Where it's comfortable for you. I think a lot of people come to us saying, "Hey, I just want a magic solution, so I only have to do this once." And everybody's different. That's the issue, is what works for one person may not work for another, because we are not all little Barbie models that just exponentially get bigger everywhere as you get bigger. And that's often what pattern sizes do when they grade it for different sizes. It's kind of an exponential all over thing. And some of us get bigger in the arms faster, and some of us get bigger in the torso. I've talked before about how my torso is more of like a large, extra large, and my arms aren't necessarily, or my shoulder width, that, so it causes issues. And that's trial and error. But there is a way to increase only on the sleeve side of your raglan increases, and not on the front and back. And again, if it's only the back, then it could be you might want to try increasing everywhere but the back, but you really got to keep track of what's the back and the front, and try it on when you get to where you think the yoke is right, and see if it worked. And if not, be ready to rip back. It could be, I say this with a caveat, it could be you want to try with yarn that pulls out better first, but also know that doing it with one yarn and it worked, and you ripped out 6 and 7 times and then it worked, the next yarn you try it with, which maybe is fancier yarn that you're not feeling as like wanting to dabble with before the set solution happens, it might drape differently than the first yarn you were knitting with. Like, this sweater feels and looks different than the same exact pattern, same exact size, knit with different yarn.
My cap shawl that I'm doing, the first one I did with fiber spates on just a size smaller hook, and because fiber spates is so springy, it's like whoop. And this one, it's just like,
you're doing the Hearthstone, right?
Yeah, I'm using the Hearthstone, and it's like, let's spring together, and it's like, it's bigger. It's the drape is different and everything.
This isn't together to me, but that's okay. I know what you mean. I'm just saying.
They're springing wider.
Let's expand.
Yeah, expanding, yes.
And be happy together, yes. So yeah, that's another thing to keep in mind. You might find something that works, and then when you do it in the next yarn, it might not behave exactly the same. That's not to say, like, don't do it. But it might not behave just the same as the other one did, but hopefully it'll be close enough that it will still fit, right? So that's the jumping off point for you to start experimenting with that. I will say that is an easier, like, trying to make it bigger on just the arms and not the front and back, or everything but the back, that kind of thing. I think it's easier with raglan seams than with a pattern that's calling for all over increases, that just wants it to get big everywhere. That's harder to shift, so it's only getting bigger to make space for your arms. And that might require, like, there are some patterns that do all over increases and then raglan seams after that, and that might be where you can modulate for armholes, things like that. So give that a try. Again, know that it's not magic. It might not work on the first try, but you might start getting closer and start figuring out what's
lots of notes, lots of trying on.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So there's that. And the other questions, which Liz is going to dig up now, are related, kind of. Maybe we can read both of them.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Well,
you just gave me a look. I'm just conscious of the time. So
I'm gonna read the first.
I have to go to the dentist in a little bit, so we're trying to keep it so I'm not late to the dentist. I'm not looking forward to that, but I need to go. So
I'm going to read the Dear Becky and Lizzy email that I got.
Yes.
And the comment on YouTube is very similar, so
that's why I was thinking we could. You're not going to read them both. You're just
I'm just going to read the email.
That's fine.
So
go ahead.
Because I have it pulled up.
Because we also want to reiterate the whole. If it's coming onto this broadcast, we really want you to email or write us to make sure it gets on the broadcast.
Yes.
So.
Hello, Becky and Lizzy. I have a question. I want to make the pressed flowers cardigan and join you in April. I would like to make it in a lightweight yarn for spring, summer. I usually make things for warmth. I live in Minnesota. But for this cardigan, I want to make it lighter. I have no confidence in my ability to pick out a yarn that might be cotton or linen or bamboo. I shy away from any super wash yarn as I have had some bad experiences with it growing. Can you help? I know the pattern calls for a sport weight yarn. Love your information. I have learned so much from YouTube.
yarn.
We are.
The one on the YouTube channel wasn't about the cardigan, it was about the shawl, and it was about liking my colors, but wanting to do it both smaller and possibly a cotton type fiber. And I think the one on YouTube said she liked the bright color but not the green. So, but let's start with the question. So first of all, the cardigan is written for a sport weight. Everything else in the series is mostly, I think, written for DK. And sport weight's a little thinner. And some of that's because the spin cycle she wrote it for. She wasn't specifically making the shawl for spin cycle. But the cardigan uses spin cycle, which we don't have. And that comes in sport and worsted. And our yarn, the wool yarn, comes in DK. And we have a fingering equivalent kind of in the Perth and the Heritage Wave, but they're kind of on either side. So most of the thoughts I've had about the cardigan have been, yes, you're still using the DK. The DK, because it's more small batch produced, has some thick, like it has some thinner spots to it. It's one I think can play really well with like the Patagonia and the Alba. Again, these are wools, but they're really thin DKs that I think could be substituted for sport. So I think, and some people will not be okay with making that shift, but I'm going to do it, and I'm going to hope it all works out okay. It's a little bit of having some faith and hope that it'll work. And knowing that the things I'm picking are not super heavy DK. Like the Fiber Spates is a heavier DK. That might get a little chunky for the sweater, but it still could be a possibility. So to move to the cottons, I don't know if we just had an employee or a guest bike up, but anyway, we'll deal with that later. So employee for across the way. Anyway, so to move to the cottons, we've got some DK cottons. We don't have a ton of sport cottons. We've got, in terms of, I think he's heading out again. I just pulled something over that I hadn't realized how little we had of this, but it's hard to bring things back into stock right now, let's just be honest. The bamboo pop was a last minute, so I'll throw it out there first. We've got multicoloreds and solids in the bamboo pop. They have classified this as a DK. I would really call this a sport weight. This might be one of the few things we have that could be interesting to do the cardigan out of, and the shawl, even though the shawl says DK. Again, if you want a more summery thing, this is bamboo and cotton 50-50. It's shorter color patches, so it's harder to know. It's not the longer color fade of the feeder brook. It's really hard to get the exact equivalent of the feeder brook in a non-wool. In our shop, I'm speaking from our experience. So the bamboo pop could be really interesting to pair a multicolor with a solid. I will say we don't have a ton in stock right now. So that is a challenge, right? If there's time, I'll go grab the Zooey for the cardigan.
Yeah.
But again, the Zooey, which is, I think it's kind of more of a DK. They call it sport on their label. It's weird what they're doing with yarns now, right? Yeah. That's a cotton and a linen blend. It's textured. So some people will like putting that into a cardigan or a shawl, and some people won't. And that has multicoloreds and solids, but the multicoloreds were phased out a while ago, so we have really random stock of the multicoloreds. Do we have enough for a sweater or a shawl? I'm not sure. You'd really have to reach out to us. We're probably not going to build kits to post online that are for other fibers, just because of time and energy and resources. We'd love to post kits for everything. We already have people asking about, can you pick me out a kit? Can you send me a kit? Can you surprise me with stuff? And again, if it's in the comments, we'll try to get back to you. We might lose track. So please email us. Either Liz or me for that, because we'll flip-flop them to each other if you're looking to build a kit. Some people have emailed and copied both of us, and that's perfect. we'll get back to you when we can. So, to move to the things, Liz, that you pulled that we were talking about yesterday.
Yeah, I pulled some of the Cotton Supreme Waves. It goes in and out of different...
It's got longer batches of color, which could be really interesting for the cardigan. The DK Waves is a little thicker than some of the other stuff we pulled. And we don't necessarily, except for like the Bamboo Pop and maybe the Zooey, we don't really have solids and multicoloreds because we're in the same yarns, and we're building this off of the idea that I started, that I pulled from someone else's idea of the pressed flowers being a multicolor and a solid. It doesn't have to be. Carol is doing a cowl that has 2 multicolors shifting at different spots, right? And you could do this with 2 solids. I think it'd be very pretty with 2 solids. It's just the idea of a color changing is fascinating because it looks like you did so much more work than you did. So the Cotton Supreme DK, we've got several colors online. Again, we don't have a ton of this, but we've got all of these guys online, and I think these could be paired either with the Summer Delight in some way. If we have time, we'll hold up a couple combos and see, but let's just talk about the multicolors to start with. This could be paired with the Ultra Pima. The heavier the cotton is, the more tightly spun it is, the more it could potentially grow. I haven't had cotton things grow on me, but I've heard they do. So I'm throwing that out there just in case it happens. Like the weight of something. Like alpaca is something that doesn't have enough structure, so it grows under its own weight. Cotton is something that in some ways might have too much structure. So know that going in.
The other color change in the cotton is the Vivo, and it has a slight texture to it.
Just a slight texture, and the color changing isn't as like super chunky as this.
Yeah.
Like, I have a sweater somewhere, and it's kind of random, which also could be really fun. It's a little thinner than the Supreme DK, so it might lend itself towards feeling more like a sport weight. But, like, we've got that pastel-y rainbow.
Yeah, I was thinking yarns, that right? Would be really
I think this would be really pretty with the right contrast. None of it's going to be as bright. Like, see, this is a lot brighter than these guys, but all of the color-changing cottons we have that are close to the right thickness are going to be more muted. Again, of what we have available in the shop. We'd love you to shop with us. We totally understand if we don't have what you need, you know. If you wanted to do bright with a super dark contrast, if you wanted to do this, we don't have a lot of this in stock, but this would be really muted if you liked greens, but you liked lighter colors. Let's see. So that was the navy of the Summer Delight.
Yep.
With this is Bloom in the Berroco Vivo. I think that could work well with this too, potentially. Again, different yarns together are not going to feel the same. Like, there's just anything we're holding up at this point won't feel the same when they're combined. Doesn't mean that they don't work, but if that's really if that texturally, if that like the touch of that, I know there's other words, I'm losing them right now. If you've got a sensitivity to different fibers or different feels of different yarns on your skin, this may not work for you. If you're okay with it, well, it's all cotton and it all breathe, then this might be just fine. The porcelain will go with almost anything, but the lighter you pick, the more it might get a little washed out.
The porcelain in that one would be
so
really
this
pretty.
Is the porcelain in the Summer Delight, and Equator is the one with all the blues and greens. That could be really neat. There's like the Sammy cotton or the Ultra Pima from Cascade are all things that I think could play well with any of the color changing. They will feel a little different, but they'll all be plant fibers, so they'll be less fuzzy on your skin in the summertime. So I think this would be beautiful. This is the Vivo Rain. If you wanted a neutral, what's that one called?
This one is Cumulus.
And even like this would be super subtle but very pretty. The Dewdrop is what I've knit a whole sweater out of, a little t-shirt one. again, the dewdrop, we don't have enough of this in stock, but if you want it super subtle, I wouldn't necessarily do super subtle. But the new peach could also be super subtle. Either for the person on the YouTube comment was talking about a shawlette rather than a shawl and how much yarn to use, and I'm not really sure. The shawl, the full-blown shawl, calls for 2 skeins, and sometimes the wool has more yardage on it, but 2 skeins of each color for the big shawl. So you could try just 1 skein and just see how far you get. And the shawl has a spread out flower pattern, which is what I'm doing now, and then the edge has a more like jumbled flower, like lots more flowers closer together. You would just shift to that sooner. And you'd have to make that decision.
What is the needle size on that?
I want to say it's a 6, but let me find it. Yeah, it's a 6, a 4 millimeter. And I think any of these could be fine. On
any of the, if you could go down to fingering weight and put it on a smaller needle and wind up with a more compressed.
Okay, so you're saying that for someone who wants to change for a summery look.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I'm fine with changing needle size and weight of yarn. And I talk to other people in the shop when I'm like, I don't know, because it's changed. Like the cardigan's written for sport, and Liz and Carol will look at me like, you just change it. And I'm like, yes.
But
some of us say, well, let's just change it. And others of us say, but it says sport weight on the pattern. And that makes the brain want to like misfire. Yeah. So know that it's okay, but it will change things. It might change how it fits. When you test your gauge, you might find the stitches are too tight to reach gauge. And then you have to decide if you want a magic math or if you want to abandon hope and switch projects or something. You know, like, well, that's personal decision.
What I was thinking for the shawlette is a fingering weight color changing cotton on like a smaller needle.
Do we have that?
I think so.
We've got the Bel Viso for a solid. They're different plant fibers. We have some super subtle color changing fingering weight. That I think is what Liz is going for right now. So that could make it more lightweight. Were you saying change to a smaller needle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, especially if you were wanting to make the shawl smaller.
You could do the same instructions potentially. Yes. The keeping it on the same size needle might work, but you also might see the stitches and the carried colors between the stitches. You'd have to test and find out.
That's why I said shrink your...
The last thing before we go to the super small stuff like this, some people might like the purple and gold in this. And again, you could put it with a white, you could put it with a dark color. There's so many options. For the Vivo with, say, the Jody long. The Ultra Pima has so many colors. We don't have time right now because I got to go to the dentist in like 5 minutes. So, but what Liz is pulling is we have these stone-washed, like, tonals. Like, they're solids, but they're also not, like, really, like saturated solids. They're stone-washed solids. In the Bel Viso, it's a whole bunch of plant fibers. It's cotton, linen, and nettle, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then we have the Coton, which is a much lighter fingering, but it's at the thin. And we used to have a more rainbowy color of this, but we might not have it in stock anymore. And we just haven't brought this back in because it's not a huge seller. So we haven't super stocked up. We're having trouble stocking up on the basics right now. I'm working on that. But these are all color changing. So this would end up being super subtle. I would say with the cream or like the dark gray, that especially the dark gray with any of these could really make it pop. Ta-da! So, but they would be subtle. They're not super saturated like the Feederbrook. And some of that is the color palettes that are being produced or that we are able to bring into the shop. And some of that is like, even with these cotton, it's kind of hard to get super saturated colors with plant fibers.
Different fibers and bases always take color different.
Mm-hmm. And the plant fibers, you have to super soak them. Like, we do have some cotton stuff that's darker, but we don't necessarily have a whole lot of multicolored brights. So when I get back from the dentist, I will do my best to try to list in the description some yarns that we think could be options to pull together for yourself. And if you email us, we'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as we can with some options. But yeah, it's a little challenging sometimes. So
caveat on us getting back to you. We're thinking tomorrow is going to be a busy day. So if you
remember our sale is tomorrow. And
if you don't hear back from us, it could be next week.
It could be, yeah.
So
it's just two of us here, and I have drop and help tomorrow too, and that's starting to become popular as well. Yep. And tomorrow is our St. Patrick's Day sale. Shamrock 2023 is the code to save 25%. And we've had people we know are waiting until tomorrow to come shop with us. So,
if you call and a guy answers the phone, it's my husband. And I've already told him he's answering the phone if I'm busy. And Rebecca's
was he terrified?
Busy. No, he kept joking around. And I'm like, no, it's not a joke. You need to be serious about this. You're going to answer the phone. Don't answer
Bob's mortuary. No, this is not cool.
No.
Because you might get someone who understands it's a joke, and you might get someone who doesn't, and then we're in trouble. So.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yes, a man might be answering the phone tomorrow morning if you're calling in the morning to try to buy stuff. Yeah. So.
I told him, I'm like, if they're looking for Liz and Rebecca, it's please hold for the next available representative.
Or we take a message and we'll try to.
Yeah.
We'll try it. Like, if he needs to take a message, we will try to call you back. The problem is when we're calling back non-828 numbers, we need to use our cell phones, and then you won't recognize the number. And then the number you have in your phone as our shop is not actually our shop number. It's convoluted. It's crazy. But long distance, which for some of you it is a long distance call, but for other people it's like my cell number is not 828. Like people who live in the area don't have a local cell phone.
My cell number
right?
isn't 828.
So long distance for my landline is ridiculous. So we don't have it. But the problem is, like, 90% of even our local customers are long distance, and it's just...
The struggle is real.
So, so that's the beginning of the conversation. Like, next week we'll be talking probably more about pressed flowers and everything, because we started building kits. They will not be going online until Saturday at the earliest. I'm still doing all the end work to make them... accessible and publishable and all of those things, and that's not going to happen in the next couple of days because dentist sale, like there's so much stuff going on. So we may talk more about kits and things on Tuesday. So we've started scratching the surface of the question about, hey, I want to do something with pressed flowers but not in wool, and options are limited if you want color changing. If you want to use different colors of the Summer Delight, if we have it in stock, I think that'd be lovely. We have at least one person asking us for a 2 solid color combo, and we're starting to do that too. Some of what I've started to pull for kits for like a hat or something is in the wool, so if we're going with cottons, then it changes things up a bit. But if you don't see what you want in the kits, because we can't pull all of our inventory and put it into kits to give you the options to pick from to find what you want. We'll do our best to work with you one-on-one. Or take a chance. Or email us and say, hey, I saw these colors on your website. Do you think that would work together? Like, if you can narrow it down to these are things that my brain likes when I see it online, and then we can take a picture of it together and send it to you, rather than we have to pull a million things because we're not really sure. That'll take longer. Like, we're happy to attempt to do that for you, but it will take longer. So if you say, like, we had someone the other week who bought a whole bunch of stuff, and I would say email us first before you buy it. But she bought a whole bunch of stuff, and we had to have a conversation because something wasn't in stock, but we sent her a photo of it all together. She'd been looking at different photos and saying, I think this will work for a fade. And we sent her a photo as we were working to replace something we didn't have. And she went, oh, that clears things up for me. Now I'd like to do blah, 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 blah. And we, if we can do that before you hit the buy button, everyone's life is easier. So anyway, I think that's all I got right now.
That's all I got.
Okay. The sale is tomorrow, 25% off. Shamrock 2023 and or come into the shop or call us. But if you call us, you either might have to wait or we might have to call you back. And it could be that if you're waiting for a call back, you might just want to try calling again. If you call in the afternoon, you'll get Carol, and she might be able to help you more than Bernie can. Or she might also have to have you wait. So we'll see. If we survive this all, we will see you on Tuesday. We do have virtual sit and stitch tomorrow night from 7 to 9 p.m. on Friday night, so you can hear how the day went if we're conscious. You get into Zoom with the shop phone number.
828-877-3550.
Okay.
And Sunday.
Oh, gosh, that's right. Yes, Sunday is our Sunday afternoon. Oh, my gosh, I'm going to die after this weekend, definitely. So, I don't know if I can do a tips and tricks this weekend. Like I didn't do one last weekend, but oh my gosh. So Sunday is our all afternoon Facebook Live or Zoom, and the Zoom again is the shop phone number to get in. 1 to 5 p.m. Eastern, we will be hanging out. See what I work on this time. So, Anyway, we'll see you later.
Bye.
There's a bin right behind me. My fault.